Happy Tuesday morning. Welcome to Mornings with Patricia. Today I'm going to do a little reading from Mencius. This is translated by David Hinton. And Mencius, was around the same time, or I believe he was. Pretty close. As Confucius. So he was the great thinker of the heart. He was the second originary sage in the Confucian tradition. So let me just read a little bit about the background. The Confucian social vision represents the end of a devastating millennium-long transformation from a spiritualist to a humanist culture. And Mencius, 4th century BCE, before the Common Era, invested that humanist vision with its inner dimension by recognizing that the individual too is part of the primal ecology. He saw all the spiritual depths of that cosmology, and this led to a mystical faith in the inherent nobility of human beings. These were very war-ravaged times, so I'm going to do a little reading from it today. And they're always talking about how to govern the masses, and of course, it's kind of like that's transmutation. It's how we also govern ourselves. So Mencius said, if a common official cannot inspire a sovereign's trust, he'll never win over the people and govern them. But there's a way to inspire a sovereign's trust. If you can't inspire trust in your friends, you'll never inspire trust in your sovereign. But there's a way to inspire trust in your friends. If, in serving your family, you can't bring them joy, you'll never inspire trust in your friends. There's a way to bring joy to your family. If you look within and find you aren't faithful to yourself, you'll never please your family. But there's a way to be faithful to yourself. If you cannot render benevolence clear in the world, you'll never be faithful to yourself. Hence, the way of heaven is in faithful things, and the way of humankind is in faithful thought. If you're faithful to yourself, you cannot fail to inspire others. And if you aren't faithful to yourself, you'll never inspire others. So, I was thinking about Confucianism, and then a little bit later Taoism. And Taoism, is the middle way. So it relied less on the culture of the people. And Confucius is all about, this is, the right thing to do if you're in this category, or, everything had its place in order according to Confucius. And with Lao Tzu, in Taoism, it was, the middle way. But what Mencius is really talking about is about, being faithful. And that you can't rule over others if you're not faithful to these things, your friends, your family. You can't inspire joy. You can't do any of those things unless you're what? Faithful to yourself. And if you're not faithful to yourself, then you can't find joy. And you can't rule over your own life. But the way of heaven is to be faithful, and the way of humankind, he says, is to be faithful in our thought. So, I'd like to try to give you some tools, to start each day with, or to end even your night with, right? And to be faithful to oneself, to be faithful in thought. What does that mean? I think a lot of times we get really wound up in just being so afraid of making mistakes, and then we do make mistakes. We just think, oh my goodness, right? When will I ever learn? But I would have to say that is how we learn. We learn by our mistakes. We learn what we don't want or what not to do. And sometimes we have to do those over and over and over until we learn that at a really deep level. And it's possible, if you believe in rebirth or reincarnation, that these are soul patterns. Certain things are soul patterns within us. We may come into families or lifetimes where that seems to be, the big leitmotif. And leitmotif is something that keeps appearing. L-E-I-T new word, M-O-T-I-F, leitmotif. And that's a big thing in writing. So, you know, how do you make faithfulness your new leitmotif? You know, we could maybe karmically inherit some of our patterns, but it doesn't mean that once we're aware of them that we can't make new patterns, right? Patterns that serve us better, patterns that allow us to grow in ways that we want to grow, because, you know, again, and I say this over and over, life is not happening to us, it's happening for us. And this is such a huge understanding. When you understand that life is happening for you, then you also understand that you have a little bit more control over your destiny maybe than you thought you did, right? But you have to be faithful in your thinking. So you have to be true to your path, true to your way of thinking. And that means coming back to center every time that you encounter a mistake in your life. And so that might be a new verbiage for you that might help to move you a little further from that judging of yourself. So when you encounter a mistake that has happened, right? Not that you've made one, even though you may be the doer or you may be involved in some way. So this way you can keep your thoughts more clear. You can go, oh, and you may notice these things a lot more quickly than you would have in the past. So being faithful. You know, Mencius is saying something really profound, that once people can figure this out for themselves, they can be self-managing in a lot of ways. And I have always believed that. I have always believed that people are self-managing at their core. They want to do the things that are best for them. They want to experience the things that bring them the most joy. And why wouldn't they? Right? But sometimes we have to go through a whole bunch of experiences in order to understand that. That's Romeo in the background, giving us a little pug music. So maybe I can talk about myself and my process. By the way, I'm not sure I like that word, process. It seems so mechanistic. It seems really to distance me from what's really happening, what I'm really experiencing. So I'll just talk about me and my individual experiences on the path. When I have done things out of fear or feeling that if I don't do such and such, then, you know, things won't be taken care of, like when I was working so many years ago, and I just knew that I had to stop working at that time for the state. So much had happened. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been faithful to myself, and I wouldn't have discovered, you know, the beauty of service in this way to others, and then that service to myself. Now, there's a lot of times we may not like our job and we don't want to work it. That isn't what was happening for me. It was really a crisis on so many levels, and the more that I forced myself to stay there, the more I got into crisis on physical, emotional, and spiritual, mental levels, I would say. So, you know, when you're not doing something that isn't faithful, now, you know, if you are working a job or a 9 to 5 and that's not something you really want to do, then you can explore other things. It doesn't mean that you're being terribly unfaithful to yourself. It may be the only thing that you think you have right now, and other avenues haven't shown themselves to you. Also, the way we spend our time, you know, if we are spending our time escaping the world, then, you know, maybe we aren't really being faithful to our path. I know that sometimes it's really hard when people retire because they're used to working, you know, the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and then they have all this time on their hands, and all the plans that they thought they would have, all of a sudden they can't figure out what to do, and they may spend time watching a lot of TV or those sorts of things. And again, I'm not judging you of those things, but what is your faith to yourself? What most do you want to develop in yourself? patience, kindness, compassion, the ability to meet each day. I was thinking today too about that word expectation. I really have not a lot of time for that word because it's something that gets us in this flux, right? We expect things to go a certain way, and then when we don't, instead of just being maybe delighted or interested that maybe something is changing, we go into a very deep, dark place because of our expectation. I don't think that, I'm not saying don't be excited, right? I'm not saying don't make plans. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying part of that faithfulness to ourselves is to greet each day. Like we know what's going to happen, but we're okay, if the schedule gets changed. We're okay if something new happens or something different happens. So many times I thought something needed to happen a certain way, and then when it happened another way, I was just, in the long run, delighted by what I learned, delighted about the opportunities, things I couldn't have even foreseen. So going back to being faithful. So if you have a spiritual path you're following, and you spend mental time in unkind thoughts, you're not being faithful to that spiritual path. And also, and this is such a hard one, is being faithful in kind thoughts to yourself. Right? I think if we really sat back and thought about how we think about ourselves, or the monologue, the interior monologue that happens, we might be kind of appalled because we would never treat somebody else that way, but we certainly often treat ourselves that way. And that's not being a kind friend to ourselves. That's not being faithful to ourselves. We are our own best teacher. Did you know that? Because we get to see what works and what doesn't. We get to see what we've learned from, point X to point Y, point A to point B. Right? And that tutelage, that kind of schooling is so individualized, just for our benefit. You might think about it that way. Instead of beating yourself up over things, you might think about what an excellent tutelage you've encountered. What spiritual schooling you've encountered to make your life this amazing experience. So today I'm really going to ask you just to concentrate on being faithful to your inner self, faithful to your vision, and allow that vision to change, be fluid in your vision. Allow things to happen and be amazed instead of disappointed. So that's what I hope you are today. I hope you are amazed at your day, this terribly terrific Tuesday. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, I love myself. And I love you. Have a beautiful day. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.